Paralympic sport, you know, has defined my whole life. I started doing sport at 7 when I became a wheelchair user. My parents thought it was important for me to be fit and healthy. And then through school, I sort of gradually did some more competitions. Went to Stoke Mandeville for the first time in 1982. And for me to be there was amazing, you know, to be in what was then the Olympic Village dorms, which, you know, as a 12-year-old is the most exciting thing ever. Not so much when you get older, but it was a great experience being there at junior level competition. And really from there, that's where I kind of heard about Paralympics. You know, I remember watching the 84 Olympics, watching the likes of Seb Coe, Ed Moses, and thinking, that is what I want to do. And then of course with the Paralympics there in 84, and then it was just sort of 4 years after that, 88, which was my first Paralympic Games that I competed at. Never thought that my Paralympic career would ever, you know, bring me to somewhere like the House of Lords, but, you know, everything that I learned and everything that I did, has contributed to who I am.
Well, let's start back at Stoke Mandeville, if you like. The first time you went there as a youngster, did you ever think you could be a Paralympic champion?
I knew at 12 that I wanted to be a Paralympic champion. Wasn't entirely sure that I could because although I was good at athletics, I wasn't the best. The best girl in Britain went to my school, which was pretty miserable because I didn't really win much. But I remember beating her in our last juniors together, so I was 16. And really at that point I thought, okay, if I can beat her, then who else can I beat? And by that time I was a member of a club, I was in a mainstream athletics club, I was training, you know, and every decision I made was around me wanting to be an athlete. So I went to Loughborough University because of the sport, and it all just sort of started slotting into place really. And the big step for me was making Seoul in 88. You know, realistically I was probably one of the last members of the team to be selected. You know, I was right at the bottom of the list. But that gave me experience, you know, being with the GB team. You know, we all gathered at Stoke Mandeville before we went, you know, seeing the whole team there, you know, the tracksuits and everything together, travelling as a team. And then also after the games we came back to Stoke, and that was really special. You know, Stoke has been there for not just athletically every step of my life, but I've celebrated my 16th, my 18th, my 21st birthday there, most of my wedding anniversaries, and Stoke Mandeville still is central to most things that we do in the sport.
Do you think enough people in the world know about this special place, Stoke Mandeville, and in particular the hospital, of course?
Do you know, I don't think enough people do know about it. I think what's been amazing is with the naming of the mascot, Mandeville, then that's really helped in terms of getting people to understand. But if you look at sort of Stoke Mandeville the hospital, and sort of the rehab movement and the work that sort of the Gutman did there through the Second World War, you know, to get patients out. You know, there weren't enough bed spaces to have the number of patients that were being injured in the Second World War. And sport was an amazing tool, which it's hard to think that it was only in the 40s that, you know, there wasn't disability sport and nobody knew anything about it. But he kind of created this movement, and I think it's important to remember history, but also to remember how far we've come, because in the 40s and 50s, you know, wheelchair racing wasn't really invented as a sport. Lots of doctors and nurses thought that, you know, paraplegics shouldn't do wheelchair racing because it was too taxing on the body. And, you know, there's pictures from the early days of a 100-yard race and doctors and nurses being on the finish line in case these poor patients passed out. And sort of this rapid transition to, you know, in the 80s, then, you know, actually guys are marathon racing, you know, they're doing all sorts of other things. And probably not in the mainstream world has sport developed that quickly.
You are an incredible athlete in the sense that you won just about everything that was going for you. Is there any one performance you can look back on thinking, that was my best ever? I couldn't do any better than that. It was perfection. My best ever race would be the 100 metres final in Athens. My 800 was awful. Funny enough, I think that was one of my best commentaries as well.
The 800 was unbearably bad. Yeah. Split second decision, the wrong one, put myself in the wrong position, sure. Just everything went bad. And then everyone around was saying, is it okay, it's too far? And quite rightly. And that's what, you know, it should have been said. And to come back and to win the 100 was, for me, was the best race that I've ever done in my life. And the one that I was the happiest with and most relieved with. And, you know, it was, I kind of, in my whole career, I probably lost more races than I won from the beginning to the end. But actually, that's the one that, if I ever think about my career, I think about the 100 metres.
If you had the chance, just looking back in time, if you like, if you could have said something to Ludwig Goodman, having experienced everything you have experienced in your life, what would it be, do you think?
If I could say anything to Sir Ludwig, it would just be, I mean, it's very true, it's thank you. Because at the time that he was creating the disability sports movement, there was so little value around disabled people. Before he did his rehab work at Stoke, if you broke your back or your neck, you were left in hospital to die. It was that simple. And you might have gone home, but you had no life expectancy, you weren't expected to work or contribute or do anything at all. And the stuff that he did started the change in the way that disabled people were perceived. And then other people were able to build on that. But without him, and in a bizarre way, without the Second World War,
sure,
we wouldn't have the rights that disabled people now have.
Well, funny enough, just outside these walls at this very moment in time is a demonstration by a lot of disabled people about, not being segregated away from society. I know that's something you're very passionate about.
Well, when I was growing up, even at the age of 7 and 8, you didn't really see disabled people out and about on the street. Education was segregated, a lot of disabled people live in homes, and they just weren't around. And sport helped change that. Sport plus legislation brought disabled people out, and the Paralympic movement has done so much to change other people's, non-disabled people's view of disability. And that's been amazing, and actually, for me, years on in the House of Lords, I'm not sure anyone ever thought that I'd end up here, but, everything that I didn't want happening to me, I didn't want to be locked away, I wanted to be out and working and doing sport. It's really important we still keep fighting for those things, because although a lot's been achieved, there's still an awful lot that we have to do to make sure disabled people aren't sidelined and ignored. So Ludwig Goodman's left just an enormous legacy, and the fact that we still have the stadium at Stoke Mandeville, it goes, regenerated, there's lots of young people coming through. It's important to remember everything he did and the battles that he fought, and that he just didn't give up. I would have loved to have met him, because I'm sure he was stubborn and awkward and never stopped and just kept going and going because it was something that he believed in. And I think we can all learn from that. And I think he would have been really proud, to see from the work that he started that, in 2012 we will have a great Olympics, but we will have an amazing Paralympic Games, and it's down to one person and everything that he did.
Looking back to your very first Paralympic Games in '88 in Seoul, not a lot of people in Korea knew very much about disability, let alone in sport. How was your experience?
To go to Korea was amazing because it was such a big step up, and to be with the team was incredible. But nobody really knew the term Paralympics in Korea. It was kind of rent-a-crowd. The same people came in every day to watch, and they supported different countries every day. And I think even back home, we knew about it, but it wasn't particularly reported in the press or the media. There was a programme on the BBC about 6 weeks later, which mostly talked about the Irish bocce team, not about our performances. So, it was exciting to be there, but we felt as if we were really at the start of something that nobody knew anything about.
And was Barcelona in 1992 better in that respect?
Barcelona was a massive step up because media got behind it. So we had newspaper journalists out there, we had BBC coverage, one of my races was shown on grandstand. As an athlete, you kind of think, that's it, I've made it. It's brilliant. My mother was really disappointed because I'd spat some water out on the track and she never forgave me for that. But there was stuff in the papers every day, and for me as an athlete, going there and winning, that was great.
Yes. But
it felt that people started to know what the Paralympic movement was about, and that it followed on from the Olympics, and it was about elite sport, and we felt that people were bothered.
You carried on winning from then on, really, but what about 1996 in the USA?
Atlanta was really weird as a Games because we expected it to be a step up from Barcelona. And if you look at the support that American athletes have in terms of the university scholarships and their road racing and disability rights legislation is amazing in the States, nobody really cared about the Paralympics. And all the baseball matches that hadn't been on during the Olympics got scheduled during the Paralympics, and nobody really came to watch. And although there was good media coverage and it was covered very well, it was kind of disappointing that there wasn't really a huge amount of interest in the games. It felt like, for me, that the games had kind of stalled a bit, and what should have been an amazing opportunity to kind of push on just fell a bit flat. And it didn't help, you know, the British Olympic team didn't have a great time. They had different experiences. But for the Paralympic team, it wasn't a huge amount of fun to be at.